I have turned this mic on 100 times, and I could not figure out how to turn it on in that moment. What does that say, friends? Does it say it's time for another cup of coffee? I don't know. I wanted to take a hit on that because the poor production team, they always get the bad nod when something doesn't come on just right, and everybody looks upstairs like it's their fault. This time it was mine, okay? Everybody calm down. How's everybody doing? All right, it's so good to see you in the room. Welcome to our online friends. Everybody say 10 o'clock. Say it louder. All right, next week, we are having one service. At what time? 10 o'clock. Write it in the chat, 10 o'clock. If you show up at 9 o'clock, there will be no one here. Okay, we are having one service at 10 o'clock because we are having the backyard bash right after service because we want to continue growing in community. We want you to know that there's a whole group of people here at ALC that you don't know yet. All of you second service friends, there's a whole first service group of people that maybe you've never met. And this is an opportunity for us to come together and meet each other, make some new friends. You'll get to hang out with the staff and me and the other pastors. And so you can either bring a picnic lunch if you're like bougie and want your own home food, bring your own home food. Or Jesse J's, if you know, you know. Jesse J's, we're going to have Jesse J's Latin food. Their food truck's going to be out here. And so you can purchase food for your family if you don't want to bring a picnic lunch. But please plan to come next week for service at what time? 10 o'clock. And then right after it, we're going to do some community stuff. There will be an Easter egg hunt. The Easter Bunny will be here for the little kids. But this is not just about families. Like if you're a family of one, come on out, make some new friends, okay? Next week at 10 o'clock. If there's someone that usually is near you and you don't see them today, text them and say, hey, don't come to church next week at 9. Come at 10, okay? Because we don't want anyone to get here and be frustrated. We want to have a really great day. So this is our last week of Resolve. I've so enjoyed this series. We followed Peter as Peter has followed Jesus. And then we're going into our next series, which is storytelling. That's going to lead us right up to just one of the most important weeks if you follow Christ, if you follow Jesus. That's our Holy Week. That's the week we talk about his death, his burial, and resurrection. And so our next series is going to lead us right up to Easter. It's going to be awesome. But today we're going to wrap up this conversation with Peter following Jesus, right? Last week, if you remember, we ended with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Peter, James, and John were close by, and Jesus was praying because he knew what was coming. And every time Jesus would go back to Peter, James, and John, they would have nodded off and gone to sleep. It happened like several different times. And finally, that third time, he's like, forget it, just go to sleep, okay? So that's kind of where we left off. And then today we're picking up right at that moment because at the moment that he's telling them, you know what, just forget it, go to sleep, that's when this next thing takes place that we're going to be talking about today, okay? Now, if you are familiar with the Bible, you know that maybe you're not, it's divided into two big chunks, right? So there's the Old Testament that was written before Jesus was born, and then there's the New Testament that was written after Jesus was born. It's about the life of Jesus, and it also, deals with, how the church and things was formed and letters to the church after Jesus' life, okay? So it's kind of two big segments. Well, in the New Testament, there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, okay? So that's the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all tell the same story over and over again. They tell about the life of Jesus, like what happened, his lineage, his birth, his ministry time. It would be like we all decided to go on a trip together, maybe, let's just say kayaking. How about that? Because I love it. And we all decided to stop by Starbucks first because you should, as we all know, get a Starbucks before we kayak. And so maybe 4 of us decide we're going to go out and we're going to kayak. And we go out and we get on the water. And I'm on my little orange boat called the Minnow. And I'm pedaling around. I see a bald eagle. And maybe we go up to a restaurant, pull in, eat, and leave and go back. And then when we go home, the 4 of us all go to our separate houses, and we write down at the end of the day the cool, fun things that happened, all that we saw. And maybe I write in my little note to myself, my journal entry, talks about the bald eagle that I saw. And maybe the next person who writes something talks about that they almost flipped their kayak and are laughing about that. It's all the same experience, right? But depending on who wrote it and what they thought was important or what was memorable to them, something else might be included in their version that wasn't included in mine. And so that's how Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, even though they are telling the same story, the same account of what happened, you might read something in one that you don't read in another. And that's because different people wrote them. So we're not going to read all 4 versions, but I'm going to tell you in case you want to write it down, because you know I love you to take notes. I want you to grab your notes app on your phone, grab a piece of paper, get your Bible out. Let's take notes together. These are the places that you're going to find the section that we're talking about today. It's in Matthew 26, Mark 14, Luke 22, and John 18. So take a picture with your phone, write it down. We're not going to read them all, but I'm going to tell you what happened. Now, before we got to this moment, before Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and the disciples are falling asleep to pray, he tells them, he goes through like a pre-game show of what's going to happen before this even happens. There was a movie that came out recently called Infinity Wars. Did y'all watch that? Thank you. Thank you. Like first service, everybody, it was like crickets. It was like, do y'all not have a social life? Do you not watch movies? Do you hate Marvel? What is wrong with everyone? And so, does anyone like movies? Okay, good. Like I pre-order popcorn. I want a good seat. Okay, good. So when Infinity Wars came out, there was this young lady who watched all the Marvel movies. She loved all the characters and how they interacted. Her family could care less. Her family was like some of you, like, when are we getting over this part of the sermon? You know what I'm saying? Like, they could care less. But they were trying to be supportive, and so they were going to go with her to the movie. And so she put together a slideshow of all the characters that they were going to see through all the movies so that they would understand why, Hawkeye was so important to this character and why Ant-Man was here and who are these people, like all of the characters, right? And so this is kind of what Jesus did for the disciples. He didn't realize that's what they were doing, but that's kind of what he did. So before he went to the garden to pray, he took it a step back and he sat around a dinner table with his disciples. You may have heard it called the Last Supper. It was the last time Jesus was going to sit with the disciples before he was crucified and eat that kind of meal with them. And while he was sitting with them, he kind of gave them a pre-game show. Like, this is what's going to come. This is what's going to happen. Whether you believe it or not, whether you listen to me or not, I'm telling you, okay? So he literally says, guys, this is the last time I'm going to eat with you like this before I suffer. I think that went right over their head. And then he actually looked at Peter, who we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks, and he said, okay, dude, you're going to deny me 3 times. Like, you're literally going to be like, I don't even know that Jesus guy. And then he looked at another person sitting at the table. This guy's name was Judas. Judas was one of the disciples that had been traveling around with him and going into different ministry scenarios with him. He looked at Judas and said, dude, you're going to straight betray me. You're going to stab me in the back. As a matter of fact, why don't you get up and go on and do the thing you're going to do. So before he even went to the garden and prayed, before he even got to the moment we're going to talk about today, he gave the disciples a heads up about what was going to happen. That matters in a few minutes when we go through this. I want you to understand that in this next moment, the disciples should not have been shocked, but yet they still were. Because he kind of said, this is kind of what's coming, okay? So here we are. I've told you the verses that we're kind of going to be talking about today, and I'm going to give you an overview, and then we'll dig into some specific ones. So at this point, last week, we dropped off with the disciples falling asleep and Jesus saying, you know what, forget it, sleep. Right when he gets ready to say that, Judas, the one that he told them was going to betray them, Judas comes up to them with a group of soldiers and religious people and servants that are going to come and arrest Jesus and take him away. Judas is coming to do the thing that Jesus said he was going to do. He came to betray him. And so up comes Judas, and Judas leans up. He has a signal to the guards. He says, the one that kiss on the cheek, that's the one you're going to arrest. And so Judas leans in and kisses him on the cheek, and Jesus says, really, Judas? You're going to betray me with a kiss? Really? Like an act of friendship? That's how you're going to stab me in the back? I mean, he didn't say all that. Some of that's like Holly version. Read it for yourself. But he did. But, he did betray him with a kiss, and Jesus really did question it. And at that moment, panic ensued. Have you ever been in a crazy situation and everybody reacts so differently? You've got that one that's in control and is like, everyone calm down, and everybody else is losing their mind. Raise your hand if you're the panicker in the situation. Okay, who's the ones that are like, I need you all to calm down? All right. Believe it or not, you're not going to believe this. I'm the one that's calm. Isn't that shocking? You would think it would be Brian. He's calm too, but I'm like the one that's like, everybody chill out, don't panic. So all this happens. Judas comes in, and they're going to arrest Jesus. They go to grab him. The disciples start freaking out. They start going through all of their stuff. They start going through their fishing equipment, their food, kicking aside all the firewood and stuff, and they grab swords. Now, they're not professional swordsmen. I'm not saying they didn't know how to sword fight, but these were not swordsmen by trade. So they're grabbing their swords, and they're getting ready to fight these guys off. And Peter, you know Peter, we've been talking about him this whole time, the one that's rash, that he speaks before he thinks, and he acts before he thinks, and he's always running headlong into a situation. Everybody else is kind of sitting back seeing what's going to happen, and here comes Peter. Peter grabs his sword, and he goes straight after one of the servants. Like, he hacks at him. I guess he's wanting to cut his head off, but he caught his ear. When he caught his ear, there are some children in the room. When he caught his ear came off. I was going to give you like the fun version of like stuff going everywhere and blood. Caught his ear, cut his ear off, and it hits the floor. And don't you know Jesus is like, oh my gosh, not only am I getting arrested, my disciples have no sense whatsoever. And he's like, guys, stop. He leans down and he picks the ear up and he puts it back on the guy's head and he heals him. Now, here's just a side note. Can you imagine being this servant? Can you imagine being this servant that's there to help arrest Jesus, and you get your ear cut off? You're there because you believe he's not who he says he is. You're all in about getting him out of the way and shutting him up. And suddenly he heals you and you realize, holy cow, he really is the one. And now you've been part of arresting him and you have to stand by and watch him on the cross. Can you imagine? Like, that would be crazy. But here's Jesus in the middle of all the chaos and all the crazy, and he's picking the guy's ear up and he puts it back on his head, and they get ready to take him off and away, and we'll talk about what he says there. This is the crazy moment we're going to dive in today. The moment where it seemed like straight pandemonium, and how the disciples handled it and how Jesus handled it and what we can learn from it. So we're going to dive into some specific verses. I gave you the big overview, but we're going to dive into a few little pieces here and there. The first one I want to read to you is Luke 22:49, and it is their reaction to what is happening. It's one of the things that the disciples scream out when all of these people are coming and they see the betrayal happening and they're digging through their bags. Here's what they yell in Luke 22:49, Lord, should we fight? We brought swords. I'm like, oh my gosh. This is the point where I'm like, Jesus had to be like, stop. Just stop. You don't even know how to use the sword. Put it down. Go get your fishing gear. What are you talking about? Right? They literally are yelling, should we fight? And here's the question I want us to ask ourselves, but then we're going to drop it in the context of the disciples. Why are we still asking God questions we know the answer to? Now, I'm going to be hard on us just a minute, okay? Don't worry, you're going to leave here, you're going to feel great, you're going to climb the mountain, you're not going to feel destroyed, okay? Because I don't believe God wants to destroy us. He wants to help us grow and to fall more in love with him. So I'm not going to destroy us today, but I am going to challenge us just a little bit, okay? So if you follow Jesus already and you've been following him for a while, then this is something that we need to get hold of. If you've just started following Jesus, go ahead and write notes down so you'll know as you grow. If you're not sure you believe in Jesus, then this is good for you too, because you can kind of get a feel for who he is and his character, right? So the question I want us to ask ourselves are, why are we still asking God questions we know the answer to? In that moment, they've been with Jesus for 3 years. Peter has walked on water. They have sailed together. They have taken naps under the stars. They've eaten meals together. They have walked with him as he's gone into religious areas and confronted religious leaders. They have seen him heal people. In none of those scenarios has Jesus ever said, okay, boys, grab your sword. That never happened. Jesus never told them, okay, these guys are getting on my nerves. Everybody grab your sword and let's take them all out. Not one time. The only time it really talks about Jesus getting super mad was when he went to the temple, which is just a like church. He went into like a temple, a church, and all these people had moved in and were selling stuff, and they had turned the church into a marketplace rather than a place to worship God. And it made Jesus mad. And he goes in and he's flipping tables over and running them out of the building. But even then, he didn't say, hey, guys, grab your swords. And so in this moment of complete chaos, it was like the disciples forgot who Jesus was. That he was confident in who he was, that he was the Son of God, that he loved people, that he was willing to challenge people when they were incorrect. But he was not the kind of person that would grab a sword and just start destroying people. It was like they forgot. I have one of my kids asks a ton of questions. Does anybody have someone in their family that asks a lot of questions? Like they want all the details? You can't just say, hey, we're going to have a family time tomorrow afternoon. Where are we going? What are we doing? What do I need to wear? What time are we going? We're going to eat? What are we going to eat? You got those people in your life? And so I find it much easier with this particular human to just answer the question like rapid fire. Wear a light sweater. It's going to take 20 minutes to get there. Yes, we're going to go. Take your iPad. We're going to have tacos. Yes, and then we'll eat again. We'll get, like just rapid fire, right? But sometimes they'll ask a question, and then the next day they'll ask the same question, and the next day they'll ask the same question. And so I'll get to the point where I say, hey, what did I say the last time you asked me that? And I'll make them tell me. And I'll say, okay, well, it hasn't changed. We're still going to do that. Like, yeah, remember when I said we were going to go to Annapolis? Yeah, we're still doing that. 20 minutes later, what did I say we were going? Yeah, we're still doing that. But we do that to God. We ask him to re-explain to us what we already know the answer to. I'm being hard on this just a minute. What's so crazy is I did this myself this morning. I studied all week. I prayed. I wrote this. I got ready to do this sermon. And I knew I was going to tell us to quit asking God what we already knew the answer to. On the way to church, something was stressing me out. I was praying about it. I've prayed about it 20 times. And then I started laughing to myself because I literally was doing what I was talking to us about. He's already answered it, but I'm still praying as if he hasn't. See? Are we still asking God, God, will you love me no matter what, even though nothing you've done has made him not love you? You mess up again and you want to ask again. And he's like, I haven't changed. I told you I would love you no matter what. I really did mean it. You're going through a terrible time in your life and you're really in a dark place. And you say, God, are you going to abandon me like everybody else? And God says, you remember when I told you I'd never leave you or forsake you, and I never have? Like, I meant that. Like, you can ask me again and I'll tell you again, but I've already answered that. I'm not going to change. The Bible says that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if he loved you yesterday, he's going to love you tomorrow. If he never left you today, he's not going to leave you tomorrow. Like, he is the same. Yet we still ask the same questions, and at some point we have to challenge ourselves. And this is really hard, y'all. I told you this is for the people that have been following him for a little bit, right? Like just a little bit. It's hard for us to move beyond those simple questions. There's a verse in the Bible that says this, and it's a challenging verse, okay? We're not going to spend the whole service being challenged like this, but we're going to stay here just a little bit, okay? It says this in James 4:17. Remember, it's a sin, actual sin, to know what you ought to do and then not do it. That means as you're getting to know Jesus and maybe he's helping you work through some things and maybe you didn't realize, you mean I'm not supposed to backstab my neighbor who's driving? I hate my neighbor. They still haven't taken down their Christmas decorations. I can't stand them. And then you realize, literally it says love everybody. Now you're responsible for that information? Or maybe you love to gossip, somebody's telling a story and you want to be all up in it. What did you say? Can you repeat that again? Now, who was in this? And then as you get to know God and his character, you realize that he doesn't like that. And then you're responsible for that. So here's another way to say that, right? So if James 4:17 says, remember, it's a sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it, we can all take a breath, because here's the other side of that. That also means if you don't know something's a sin and you do it, you're not responsible for that until you know. Until you know. If you didn't know it wasn't okay to gossip and try to destroy someone's character. I know that it's hard to think, how is that? How do you not know that? But if you don't know, you don't know. But once you know, that's when you become responsible for it. Because once is a learning experience, twice is a choice. Once is a learning experience, God teaching us something, teaching us how to love people, teaching us how to treat people, teaching us how to walk with people. Once is a learning experience, twice is a choice. One of our kids did something stupid recently, and we were talking to them about it because, kids love that when you sit down and tell them and reiterate to them why they shouldn't have made the decision they made. And my husband, Brian, literally said to this particular human, "You get a mulligan one time." We don't play golf. Why are we, do you, a mulligan? I looked at the kid and I'm like, "Do you know what a mulligan is?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, Brian, reword. You get one gimme. You do something dumb and maybe God talks to you and it's like, hey, come on, there was a better way to love people. There's a better way to treat people, to walk with people. There's a better way to treat yourself. And that was not the right way. Well, once he tells you that, the next time you do it, you've done it by choice. Now you really are going to God and having a different conversation. He still loves you. He still adores you. But maybe you need to say, "Okay, God, I knew better and I still did it and I'm sorry. Can you help me to grow beyond that?" Once is a learning experience, twice is a choice. 2 verses, and then I'm going to quit wearing us out. We're going to go wear Peter back out again. We're going to get onto the disciple again. 2 verses. Hebrews 5:12 and Hebrews 6:1. Here's why I'm telling you that, guys, this. We can't stay the way we are forever. It would not make sense for me at the young, extraordinarily beautifully young age of 46 to still act like a 10-year-old. That wouldn't make sense, right? At some point I have to grow. And it doesn't make sense for us to be walking with Jesus for a decade and 2 decades and still be doing the same things we were doing, treating people the same way and loving the same way when we did things day one, right? And so here's what the Bible actually says about this, and it's challenging to us. It says, you have been believers so long. So this is people who have been walking with God a while. You've been believers so long now that you ought to be teaching others. You should be helping other people out. Instead, you need someone to teach you, again, the basic things about God's word. You're like babies who need milk and cannot eat solid food. And then it goes to Hebrews 6:1 and it says, so let us stop going over the basic teachings about Christ again and again. Now, if you've never heard it, you need the basics. But if you've been following God for a while, it's time that you don't need the basics. You need to be teaching someone else the basics. Let us go on instead and become mature in our understanding. Surely we don't need to start again with the fundamental importance of repenting from evil deeds and placing our faith in God. And so all of that is to say this: healthy things grow. Healthy things grow. And I know we could argue different things about that, but just take the general thing. Healthy things grow. When you get a puppy, it doesn't stay a puppy. If it's healthy, it grows. If you're taking a foreign language and you're committed to it, you can say more than, hola, donde está el baño? You know what I'm saying? Eventually you can speak the whole language because healthy things grow. And it's the same thing for us spiritually in our relationship with God. Healthy things grow. The more we get to know Him, the more we grow. And so we have to realize it's okay for us to decide. Everybody say decide. Type in the chat, decide. Listen, say it one more time, real loud and proud. Decide. It's okay for us to decide to grow up. We choose. There are some things we don't choose. Physically in our bodies, we grow up, right? And then we get older and we grow shorter again. But we grow up. Spiritually, we have to decide to grow up. I just found out recently that I've been paying for a gym membership for over a year since I moved here. Don't you judge me. I moved here and I thought, I want to make sure I have a gym close to home, so I joined a gym and it's been debiting out of my account every month beautifully, so faithful. They're so good to me and faithful, just to make it available to me. And my husband says to me, Holly, you know we're paying for a gym membership, right? I was like, man, I've been twice now, so I'm basically an Olympian. You're not ready. Right? I'm basically an Olympian. So here's the thing. I've been paying for a gym membership. I have access to the gym. I can even go to the gym and sit in the massage chairs because they're straight nice. But if I don't ever get on a treadmill or pick up any weights, then I'm not going to grow physically. I have to actually decide to go to the gym. I have to decide to work out. And if you're going to grow spiritually, you have to decide to open this book, and you have to decide to read it, and you have to decide to figure out what it says, and you have to decide to pray and talk to God, and you have to decide to worship Him. You don't have to. We get to, but we have to decide to, because healthy things grow. Now, I said I was going to quit wearing us out. We're going to go back to the disciple Peter. So here we are back at the disciple Peter. This is that moment where he's about to cut the guy's ear off. And in Mark 14:47, it actually says it like this. But one of them, which we know is Peter, was with Jesus, and he pulled out his sword and he struck the high priest's slave, slashing off his ear. All this chaos is going on. And Peter decides to take matters into his own hands. He grabs the sword and he goes for his neck, gets his ear. And here's what I want us to remember from this, okay? Frustration in waiting on God can tempt us to take things into our own hands. Frustration in waiting on God can make us want to take things in our own hands. Peter, literally, Jesus never told him to pick up a sword. He had never told him to pick up a sword. He had never told him to attack anybody. This was completely out of the character of anything Jesus would ask him to do. But because Peter didn't want Jesus arrested and he wanted to take the whole situation into his own hands, he grabbed a sword and went after this guy. And this was Jesus' response. In Matthew 16:52 through 54, he says this, "Good Lord, man." No, he doesn't say that. He said, "Put away your sword," Jesus told him. "Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and He would send them instantly?" Jesus is like, "Are you kidding me? We've been together for 3 years. When have I ever even asked you to be carrying swords around, slashing people's ears off? If I wanted to be rescued from this situation, I could instantly ask for thousands of angels and I'd be rescued. If I've not done that, I need you to calm down." That's the Holly version. All right. "But if I did," he said, "how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?" If we're not careful, frustration in waiting on God can tempt us to take things into our own hands. Rather than remembering that God is our provider, and we begin to freak out, and so we go and get a second, third, fourth, fifth job, and God never asked us to do that. He never asked us to do that. And maybe our marriage is now suffering when it wouldn't have been if we had put a little bit more trust in Him. Or maybe our relationship is rocky, our marriage is going through some stuff, and we decide to go find affection in another person rather than working on what God has put in our hands. See, our frustration and our impatience in allowing God to do what God is going to do can create a mess that He has to clean up later. Jesus stepped into that moment. Even though Peter made the mess, Jesus stepped into that moment and He still repaired what Peter broke. And I'm not saying that when we do things outside of the plan for what God has for our life, that He can't step in when we let Him and fix it, because He can. There's nothing too big for God. If you're here today and you're like, "Well, that's all well and good. I wish someone had told me that last week before I did everything wrong." It's not too late for God to step in and repair the things that you have gotten out of order and to help you to walk in a way that He wants you to walk. But what we have to remember is waiting on God requires wisdom and faith. Wisdom and faith. Faith that God is who He says He is. That He is our provider. He is our comfort. He is our strength. He is the great I am. He is the Lord that is more than enough. We have to have faith that He is all of those things, that He really will never let us down. We have to have faith even before we see. But then we have to accompany that with wisdom. Knowledge and wisdom are two different things. You can know how to do something, but if you're not wise enough to figure out the right way to do it and the right timing, then it's still a problem. My husband recently called me out on social media about something. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. If you're not friends with him, then you don't get to know. But I'm going to call him out on something, and he's not here to protect himself. He was here for first service, so it's okay. There's a difference in wisdom and knowledge. And you know this with a new parent, right? Like, we got 5 kids. First kid, you're so nervous. Like, please don't touch my kid. Germs, 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 germs. So our first kid, we're trying to learn how to change diapers and everything. And we have the knowledge to change diapers. Has anyone ever not changed a diaper your whole life? I was going to say, God bless you. You are the lucky one. So, like, we're learning. We have the wisdom. We know what kind of diaper to buy. We have the diaper. And so Brian has the kid laying out on the couch, and he's down on his knees talking to the kid like, hey, little one, you're so cute. And he's, like, changing the diaper. He knows how to change the diaper. What he didn't have the wisdom, though, in was to do it fast and keep everything covered. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference in knowledge and wisdom. And so he's like got the diaper halfway up, and he pauses right here with the diaper halfway up and everything just hanging loose. And he's like, hey, baby, I just love you so much. And at that moment, something explodes from this human that was unnatural. It hits the diaper, deflects towards Brian's face, with his mouth open saying, hey, baby, that product went in his mouth. And he's like, Holly, help me. There's a difference in wisdom and knowledge. There's a difference in having the book knowledge and knowing the writer of the book. There's a difference in knowing in your mind what to do and having experienced something yourself. Sometimes we get so frustrated by the situations we're put in, and God has put us there to learn something. He literally says, love me with all your heart and love everyone else like yourself, right? That's what he says. And then he puts us in a situation with the most annoying humans ever to help us to learn to love everyone. And the whole time, rather than trying to love them, we're like, get me out of this, Lord. Get me out, Lord. Rescue me. I'm your girl. And God's like, I'm trying to teach you something. Trying to teach you the difference in the knowledge to love everyone like you love yourself and the wisdom to know how. Faith in God, wisdom in God, wisdom that God gives us helps us to know when to take a breath and not to take things in our own hands. Difficult moments are not optional, but how we handle them is. We don't get an option as to whether or not we're going to go through hard things. The Bible literally says, in this world, you're going to have trouble. Surprise! But it also says, don't worry, I've overcome the world. Right? Difficult moments are going to come. They're not optional. We all are going to face them. But we get to decide, are we going to respond? Are we going to live in this moment of response or reaction? Response or reaction? Response, where we have thought through what we're going to do and we're going to be kind and we're going to be good in our response. Or are we going to react out of rage? Same situation, 2 choices. I kind of live in the middle. Anybody else? Where you're like, I'm going to do my best to respond, but I will cut you if this don't go well. Does anybody else have to wrestle with that? Like, I mean, let's be real. I am straight human. Are y'all? Anybody else in the room like have to sometimes wrestle when a moment is challenging? Yesterday, actually, we went to the mall, and my mom, when we're going on long journeys, she'll take her scooter and she'll scooter around. And so she's got her scooter with her, and we're playing air hockey and just having family time at Dave & Buster's. And we get ready to leave the mall, and they have these sliding doors, right, for people who are in wheelchairs or pushing strollers or have broken a leg and are on like crutches, right, so they can get through without having to open the door. And so we're like, there's 52 of us. You can't miss us. We're a big family. If you don't know, if you're new here, like we've got 5 kids plus adults. There's a lot of us. And so we're getting ready to go through the automatic door, and she's up front, and this couple have the nerve to cut her off. And I'm like, you're a pastor, 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 you're a pastor. You're a pastor, make your people proud. Don't. I was cool until the family right behind them did the same thing. And then the third family, who literally, like we're in the door trying to get out, she is in a scooter, starts to come up and cut us off. Like, cut us off, y'all, cut us off. You're a pastor, you're a pastor, you're a pastor, you're a pastor. Your people might be here. Someone's going to sing. Yeah. I said, I'm going to need you to wait a minute. I wasn't mean. I didn't say what I wanted to say, but I responded firmly. And I said, oh, come on, family. But how many times have I overlooked somebody that I should have seen? How many times have I cut someone off and I was so in my own world? How many times have I been the one that wasn't as thoughtful as I should have been? I'm not saying don't give people mercy, because sometimes we're the ones that need mercy. We're the ones that need to be like, hey, wake up, friend. Come on, Holly, wake up. God's got an assignment for you, and you're just cutting people off and going your own way rather than leaning into what God has for you in that moment. But in that moment, I really did have to choose to respond, because everything in me wanted to say, are you kidding me right now? You see her. I see her. You see her. Right? But I had to choose to respond, not to react. And we get that invitation in life a lot. With our coworkers, with our family, with our kids, with the neighbor across the street. We have to decide, is this the moment that we're going to just respond, or are we going to react? Peter, in that moment, reacted. He grabbed a sword and he reacted. It was not what God wanted. It was not what Jesus wanted in that moment. It was a reaction. And here's a little nugget that you can take with you. It's in Proverbs. It's Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1. It says this: a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Whew. You can say the same thing, but say it gently. You can still say the truth. The truth was, they better stop and let this woman through. I could still say the truth gently over using harsh words that stir everything up and make tempers flare. And here's what I want us to remember from this. As our heart changes, our actions will follow. Here's what I don't want you to take away. I don't want you to think that we all have to be the same. We don't have to look the same, act the same, speak the same, like the same things. If you don't like kayaking, that's your problem. I'll pray for you. We don't have to all be the same. God doesn't want us to be the same. He loves uniqueness. He created such a unique, beautiful world. Why would humans be different? I'm not saying we're supposed to all start looking exactly the same. Because what you're dealing with may not stress me out, but something that stresses me out may not even hit your radar. There's personal things to me that me and God need to get straight. And as I fall more in love with Him, and as I give Him my heart, and as I say, man, I'm yours, then my actions are going to follow my heart. As I get to know who He is and how much He loves me and how much He wants me to show other people how they're loved and they're valued. And as I want to be a better reflection of Him and His heart, then my actions are automatically going to follow. You don't have to tell me what to do. God's going to help me. He's told me right here. This is the best opinion you can get. So don't worry about trying to be like anybody else. You follow God, and your actions will follow Him as well. Peter did not stop being himself, but he did submit himself to God. The things about Peter that made Peter a great follower, the fact that he wouldn't give up and that he was all in and he was fierce for Jesus and that he wanted everyone to know and he wanted to be on the front line of everything. The things that got him in trouble were also the exact things that helped him be a success when he submitted himself to God. This is going to shock you. I got in trouble in school a lot for talking. And now I talk for a living. I didn't change who I was. Who I was is who I was. But as I gave who I was to God, He helped me refine all of who I am. I still am. I'm still growing. I'm still changing. I'm still learning to love Him more and more. But the core of who I was didn't just magically change. My goofy personality, the little bit of attitude I have about you ain't gonna tell me I can't do something. I can do it. Like, don't tell me I can't skydive. Who's going? Come on, let's go. Like, don't tell me I can't do something. All of that of who I am is who I am. But as I give who I am to God, then He'll show me how to use who I am for Him. We don't live our life just for us anymore. When we start following Jesus, if you don't know this, like if you're not quite a follower of Jesus yet and you're just trying to figure out the character of who he is, he's saying, follow me and I will teach you how to love people. Follow me and I'll teach you how to share the good news of who I am with other people. Peter didn't just magically quit being himself. And Peter had something inside of him that would not let him stand on the sidelines. Because when you become aware of your assignment, it's hard to sit out of the game. There was no way Peter could not just be all in. There was something inside of him that was like, man, I've been called to follow Jesus in this moment. I've been called to be in this moment with him. I'm here. I'm all in. When you find your assignment, the thing that you're created for, the thing that God's asking you to do in this moment, it's hard not to be all in because you're excited. And let me just tell you this little thing. Like, your assignment at 20 probably is not going to be your assignment at 50. Because your rhythm of life changes, who you are changes, what the things that you know change. At 20, I had a baby. At this age, take your baby home with you. I will kiss your baby and give your baby back. You see what I'm saying? Like, at the different stages of life, your assignment changes based on who you are and what God's grown you to be and our physical limitations in our body. We have an assignment, and when we can figure out our assignment, an excitement will come. So here's our thing for this week, okay? Now, I don't know if I told you guys to take notes. I'm sorry if I didn't. You know I love for you to take notes so that you can remember all week what we talked about. So if you didn't take any notes, that's cool. But I want you to write this one down or take a picture of the screen, okay? Because this is your assignment for the week. So we learned some cool stuff. We talked about, how much God loves us and who he wants us to be and how he wants us to chase him and how he wants us to respond, not to react. Okay, cool. What do I do with all that? Okay? So this is your assignment. This week, I want you to ask God where you need to grow. Because where I need to grow is not where you need to grow. Like, literally have a conversation with God. Hey, God, will you show me, areas that I need to grow? He might tell you through scriptures you're reading. He might tell you because he lets the same situation happen to you several times this week. Like, maybe he brings that same troublesome neighbor in your view 52 times, and you have to say, okay, God, I'm going to quit talking about them behind my back, and I'm actually going to go, say hello to them. I'm going to grow in this area. So pray that God helps you understand what area you need to grow in, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is to write it down. I'm amazed at what I forget. I can go to the kitchen and forget why I was there. I'll go pick random things up and carry it around the house and don't know why I have it. Anybody else? I'm like, what was I doing with this thing again? I just love y'all so much. I feel like it's a safe place all the time. We did serve day yesterday, and I'm not 15 anymore. And so after serve day, my legs were really hurting, really bad. And so I took some Tylenol. I said, Brian, will you give me some Tylenol? And he got the Tylenol bottle out of the cabinet, and there was a fake eyelash on the bottom of it, where I had just, I guess, taken my fake eyelashes off somewhere, and they attached themselves to the bottle. I don't know how that stuff happens. It just happens, right? So write this stuff down. Write it down. When the Lord tells you something, write it down. So this week your assignment is to say, Lord, help me understand what area you want me to grow. I'm not going to worry about anybody else. I don't care about their life. I care about them, but where you have to grow is your business. Where I have to grow is my business. And so, Lord, tell me my business. And then I'm going to write it down, and then I'm going to, along with God, me and God together, we're going to make a plan. Okay? The problem we get into is when we make the plans on our own. But together, we're going to say, God, help us to make a plan as to how I grow in the area that you're asking me to grow. Stand with me, guys. I feel like today's message could be entitled, Too Much Information. From diaper changes to fake eyelashes, you're welcome. Listen, I love y'all so much, online and in the room, that I don't want us to stay where we are. Even if you're in a healthy place with God, even if you and God are straight and you're doing well, we can always grow. Or maybe you're in a dark place right now and you're struggling with your mental health, or you're struggling with a relationship, or you're in the middle of recovering from a trauma. I don't want us to stay where we are. I want us to know who God is. I want us to know how much we're loved. I want us to know that there is purpose for our life beyond ourselves and our own agenda. So thank you for being patient with me and taking notes. And thank you for praying this week. Please do. Please pray, God, reveal to me any area that I need to grow, and then show me how to do it. Let me pray for us. God, you're so good to us. God, you never let us down. You help us. I love that verse in the Bible, that verse in James 1:5 that says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. Thank you for being so open to us, that we can ask you the big questions and the small ones, that we can come to you when we don't understand, that when we don't know the areas that we need to grow or to be more like you, that you will gladly show us, and you'll show us without rebuking us, because you want us to be healthy. You want us to reflect you. I pray that you speak to every heart in here this week and all of those online, God, that you would whisper to us individually our thing that we need to grow in. And then I pray simply, Lord, that you would go before us in the days to come, Lord, that you would open every door that you would have open, to close the wrong ones so that we don't get off track, that you would follow behind us, Lord, and protect our rear guard. Lord, that if any weapon tried to be formed against us, God, that it will not prosper in the name of Jesus. Any attack of the enemy, any person that wills something bad for us, God, I pray that you protect us from those attacks, Lord, and that you have your hand of great blessing on our head. In your Son, Jesus' name. And everybody said, can we just say thank you for all that God is doing? He is so good and so faithful and true. If it's your first Sunday here, we'd love to meet you out at the welcome table. We've got a gift for you. We'd like for you to take home. If you have been at ALC a while, find a new friend. Don't just walk out the door, but go find someone you don't know and introduce yourself. I love you all. 10 o'clock next week. See you soon.